There's a lot of crap in the new release section on Steam, but every now and again something awesome gets through. In today's video, I want to talk to you about an incredibly stylish FPS that deserves a lot more attention than it's currently getting. Developed by indie studio VAD Games, Self-Shot doubles as an emotionally driven narrative experience and projectile-heavy old-school shooter. The player takes the role of a young girl named Ren, who is gifted with the ability to visualize and tackle mental obstacles by creating an imaginative plane in which she can bring up repressed memories and confront her darkest and deepest parts of the psyche. Whilst a far from ordinary setup for a first-person shooter, I was unable to follow along with the majority of the game's character moments due to poor translation. But every now and then there was something I could make out to let me know Ren's motivations, what was happening, and for the game's incidental sense of humor to bleed through. I must admit, I've never had a game thank me for playing halfway through, and I've never had one do a dance break either, but admittedly I'm sure as hell not complaining. Character art is well drawn, the designs are appealing, and the way it's presented throughout the game is only complimentary and never intrusive. That's unfortunately all I can really say about the story though until a better translation arrives. Gameplay is where this game knocked me off my feet. For such a small project, the visual language on display here is absolutely striking. Combat is punctuated by punchy, rock-solid sound effects, recoil animations, as well as swift and elegant weapon switches, reloads, and a character controller that lets you hop and zip around the game's arenas with ease. Mix all this up with an absolutely killer soundtrack and you've got yourself a recipe for a great romp at breakneck speed. One thing that does get a little bit in the way at times is the geometry collision on the level. I would suggest rounding off some of the more complex shapes to be simple box colliders, just to keep things going smooth, but this is only a problem that appears now and then. The visuals on display, despite their simplistic groundwork, are presented with such flair due to careful consideration towards lighting and shaders, creating plenty of visual interest without having to go overboard on the actual fidelity in any place. Smooth, soft-shaded, muted, colored platforms and walls highlight sharp and neon-coded enemies, decorated with plenty of eye-catching particle effects like explosions and projectiles. Think Cluster Truck meets heavy bullets. The only visual aspect that I find any length of unsavory is the screen effect when you're badly hurt. The colors pulse and the screen wobbles to an absolutely obnoxious degree that can completely kill your ability to make out enemies and attacks and subsequently land you with a cheap death. Enemy variety is a little limited but memorable. Each enemy has a diverse role and the game experiments with troop combinations to keep your combat approaches fresh. Prioritizing targets can also come down to how they're positioned within an environment, and the game comes close at points to nailing the puzzle piece combat and counter approach that Doom 2016 nailed so well. The boss fights in particular are something of beauty to behold, and quite fearsome in how they are presented. Not only that, but the fights they put up are genuinely engaging, and test the player on the movement skills they've learned and their familiarity with the game's arsenal. Weapons in the game do a great job of feeling different enough from each other, and you're going to be switching between most of them at all times. The only real weapon that doesn't feel particularly useful is the flamethrower, due to its incredibly low range. Every element in the game that gets introduced gets a snazzy little cutaway, often with a small quip. In fact, visual cues in general, despite being scarce, are particularly elegant when they occur. Whether it be the way the game's control schemes appear on the wall at certain events, or just a simple loading transition, the game never ceases to feel slick, tidy, and doesn't waste your time. Time that is, sadly, a little lacking. The game took me about an hour at maximum to beat in one sitting. Price-wise, this is fair. After all, the game only costs $4.50 Australian before sale, and I managed to snag it for a cool $3.60 while the launch promotion is live. My complaint is simply that all of the levels in combat on display are too engaging to give up so soon, and I hope the game can do well enough to either warrant a sequel or at least some form of level pack DLC. The pacing overall reminds me of the first episode of a classic id Software or 3D Realms title, something that ramps you up for the real meat of the core experience. Unfortunately, Self-Shot darts across the sky like a shooting star and rolls its credits. Of course, a short, engaging experience does mean I can replay it however many times I like, but some added modes or time trial elements at the very least to mix it up would be sorely appreciated rather than doing straight reruns of the story mode. Disappointments aside, Self-Shot is absolutely worth both your time and your money, especially considering it doesn't ask for much of either. And with the game's developer being self-confessed in-game to only being about 17, I'm absolutely blown away with not only the ambition, but the raw polish on display for what's here. You've certainly landed yourself on my list, and I hope the game does well to you. Keep doing your best work, and oh my god, my eyes, I didn't blink through that whole thing! You've landed yourself on my list, so keep doing your best work, and I hope you get the recognition you deserve, and I can't wait to see more from your studio.